I would like to do mainly menswear.
So it's sort of slightly convoluted start to a question. I'm not actually from the fashion industry or fashion world myself, but there's a resonance about the way you talk about being the name which drives the consultancy of a fashion house.
Yeah.
It strikes me that there's two things which are sort of mixed up in the way that you describe how to get into the industry. And one is, and the sort of question is, as I see it, one is a drive to be in control and be your own boss, for which there's a tremendous sort of drawback because you presumably have to take the job home with you. You can't leave it behind. And the second part of it is actually you did it because you didn't want your designs to be diluted. So do you want to sort of...
Yeah, it was interesting actually. I didn't go out to have my own business at all. Actually, I did an when I was studying at the Royal College of Art, I had a mentor, a guy called Charlie Allen. And I always remember Charlie, and even to this day, I will always say, Lou, you have to work for yourself. I left the Royal College of Art in '98, and I went straight out to Italy, and I worked for a very long time for a lot of people. And I started, as Shaun said, 5 years. I'm 39 now, so I graduated in '98, so you can kind of work it out. And I really believe that to have a good body and a good understanding of knowledge to be able to do this, you have got to go and work and do your time to get the knowledge and the understanding of how a fashion house or a business can work, because it does take a lot of guts, and you're right. And it wasn't really about whether my designs were being diluted. You know, I still consult, and I've done, and it's been successful because I go in there with the mindset, this isn't about me, this is about the job, the brief that's given. I'm being paid to do it. I leave Lou Dalton at the door. And that's really what it's about, because unfortunately, you know, you're right, there's got to be a certain amount of ego, but I don't see it as that. I see it that, you know, it's been blood, sweat and tears, but unfortunately it doesn't pay me a wage, but the consulting does. So it was very conscious of me to continue that even when we started Lou Dalton. So I hope that answers your question.
Very well.
Is there any other questions?
Yeah, just a quick one, I suppose. Just about coming back to this idea of aesthetic.
Yeah.
And how you develop an aesthetic.
Yeah.
And how you kind of believe it, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I mean, how do you find it, that transition between maybe consulting for someone and having your own brand? This idea of, you know, obviously when it's Lou Dalton, it's maybe, it may or may not be more personal, you're quite clear with that aesthetic, but then obviously if you consult for people, then they're looking at you because they know what you're doing, they've got your CV, and they're kind of, so well, I suppose what I'm trying to say is it easy to be confident to say, okay, I can do my own thing and I can consult, because I've got this idea of aesthetic clear in my mind?
Yeah, to be fair, the companies that I consult for and have done to date, they're very clear of what they want. And quite often the heads of design are very clear and very focused and very vocal about what they want. So it was kind of, I learned very quickly that, you know, I had to drop, it was never about me. I've got friends who would walk in and consult and it was all about them, and they'd lose that consultancy within a month or two, you know, and I was always asked to come back because, you know, I realised it was about them, and I wanted, you know, I didn't want to push my aesthetic. And yeah, you're right, it's kind of trying to find the balance. With Lou Dalton, because it is so personal, but at the same time, it's like, you've got to tick so many boxes, because if it is too personal, it ain't going to sell. Because, you know, that's why having to bring certain people in to allow us to kind of grow the stylist, having relationships with buyers kind of helped me kind of let go. But because I worked for somebody from an early age who showed me that actually by letting go you can achieve more, and it's really about that, because, you know, yeah, you can make a lot of money consulting and you can make a lot of money as a designer, but you've got to let go. You know, it's not, when you're consulting or you're working as a designer for a brand, you've got to remember it's the brand that will always be the focus, not you. And that's how I kind of, that's how I kind of, my mindset was always, or has always been, really.
That's a really interesting point. I mean, I think, well, it doesn't matter what discipline you're in, whether you're a product designer, industrial designer, or fashion graphic designer, you're not designing for yourself, you're designing for someone else. And you always have to bear that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, you guys are going to start going for interviews in your portfolio, and of course they want to see that you've got creative flair, that you can, you know, you can do design research through to the actual finished product. But what they want to see is also that they can fit you in within their aesthetic, or they think that you can bring something new to the table, but you're actually going to be able to, they can mold you into their way of designing, and obviously then you're going to make them money. If you try to do what you want to do and try to vent your aesthetic onto them, you could end up losing them money, and then you're going to find yourself out of a job. So it was quite, I learned very early on that it wasn't about me. So try to find the balance by doing both, as you say, bit of design and consulting.
So we just have one or two more questions, and then Julian, were you going to ask something?
Well, I was going to lead off. I think we're getting tremendous advice from some as students and then going forward into the career. And what I'm sort of hearing is that, and sort of question is, when you leave college, you've had this 3 years of fantastic opportunity, and you've got this portfolio, whether it's graphics or of wonderful creative stuff, and then you have to do almost an apprenticeship, learning the trade, and then at some point you will get a break to bring some of your creativity back. If it's a 1 year, you're lucky. If it's 10 years, it's still there. How do you maintain that balance between wanting to be very creative in your own work, but the day job is about discipline?
I don't, you know, if you want it, you find a way of just dealing with it, because I think this is where you find that, unfortunately, there's a lot of institutes all around the UK, and God knows how many students, and a handful of those kids will make it because they have the drive. I don't know how, in terms of how I actually managed to find the balance, but because, you know, it's really hard to get into design, or even hard to get to do your own business, or to find, or to think that you have something that folk are wanting to buy into. But it's just try not to pull the wool over their eyes, and in terms of like what you're saying, in terms of taking or getting a job and working your way through that role, as you know, as you say, as a student, you know, this is your one time to be creative and one time to really push yourselves, because when you go into the workroom, you don't get that time anymore. But equally, you know, I know if I had a position within Lou Dalton, I'd want to see that spark, I'd want to see that determination coming through. And I did have one student, and I think she will do very, very well, because there was no job too big for her. She, you know, I remember, and she came into the studio one day and she had acrylic nails out here, and she had to sew on all these labels for me, and I was thinking, there's just no way she's going to be able to hold this needle. And her hand sewing was impeccable, and she is one of the most amazing kids I've ever met, and she is so determined, she's so focused. And I think that's the thing, if you want this, you'll find a way. And I don't know if that's probably a cop-out in a way in saying that, but that's, I really do think it's key really in design especially.
Should we call that a wrap? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.